hot and you're cold. Yes, we're diving into Katy Perry here. Hot and you're cold baseball teams here. And like Wade mentioned, I was definitely curious to talk about these teams because the two past videos that we put out on YouTube was the Rays. They got off to a little bit of a losing streak, but now that they're back on it. But the Pirates, ever since we created a video, they have fallen off. They have fallen off a cliff, it seems like. They're back to their Pittsburgh Pirate ways, but hopefully they can get back on track. I mean, it's not like they fell off a cliff or anything. They're still first in the NL Central as well. But let's talk about the Braves. They are now 24-11. They have a 7-game lead already in the NL. If you're a Braves fan, you're like, what the heck is going on? Usually we're like 10 games under 500. We're already like last year, for instance, you're like at this point, you're like 14-18. Trailing the Mets by 10 games, and you had that guy on the Mets now where it'd say like, oh, the NL East is over, and, no one's going to touch them. And then the Braves win it. And now this season, coming off of a 2 out of 3 victory over the Baltimore Orioles, which is another team that I think that could be playoff bound as well. They got some young talent, Gunnar Henderson, Cedric Mullins, Ali Rutschman. The list goes on and on. So really good series victory for the Braves. What's sticking out to you for this Braves team? You're seeing a guy like Bryce Elder come out of nowhere and be one of the leaders in ERA in all of MLB. Spencer Strider, fear the stash. He's throwing strikeouts left and right. Max Fried has a little shaky start. That was first start coming off of an injury. And then the offense continuing to rate. You're seeing Matt Olson play really good baseball. Ron Acuna is chasing for that 40-40 mark again. And you're also seeing guys, Michael Ayers is stepping out. And then you also see Marcell Ozuna. That guy was hitting like not even 100. Now all of a sudden he's hitting home runs to the chop house. So what are your early thoughts on this Atlanta Braves team? And can they keep it up and claim another NL East pennant?
Yeah, I have a couple of main takeaways from it. And the first one is Alex Anthopoulos does not miss. I mean, every Braves fan, including myself, was very butthurt about Freddie Freeman, basically getting told to go sign with Los Angeles. And, then we see it again with Dansby Swanson. And then the one that made no sense to me was trading away William Contreras after he had an all-star season. I thought he had a good chance at developing into a big league catcher. His brother is a big league catcher. Well, now Sean Murphy has been absolutely the best catcher in baseball. William Contreras has been really good for the Brewers, but I would much rather have Sean Murphy. And Wilson Contreras just lost his job as the catcher of the Cardinals. So maybe that just shows that Alex Anthopoulos didn't believe in the long-term vision of Contreras at catcher. So he didn't have time to develop a catcher at this point. He had to go get a guy that could help this team contend right away. And Sean Murphy has really elevated his game, just like we saw Matt Olson do a year ago. So Anthopoulos just dives into the metrics. He sees guys that are on the verge of breaking out, and he buys them for the cheap, and he makes them look like geniuses. So pretty good guy to have locked up for the next 8 years. And Murphy, and then Acuna, he's getting it done in a way that he hasn't in the years past. Yes, we know the guy's ridiculously fast, but he's winning games off of his defense and off of stealing bases. There for a little bit, it kind of looked like his game was shifting towards hitting the ball out the ballpark and nothing else. So I'm really impressed to see him already be among the league leaders in stolen bases. And I think the power will come, but maybe this guy isn't a 40 home run a year guy. Maybe he's a 25 to 30 home run year guy that can steal you 30 to 40 bases easily. Maybe he can steal you 50 bases. So I'd rather see that kind of Ronald Acuna. And then the pitching, you touched on it. Spencer Strider has really developed himself into an ace. I kind of saw him taking a step back. I thought his stuff was really good, but I thought hitters would catch on in year 2, and they really haven't. And then Bryce Elder has gone from being the number 5 starter to probably the 3rd best starter on this team. So just instant success for him, kind of the season we saw Kyle Wright have a year ago.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing really good strides with Strider as well, no pun intended, this season. But, like you mentioned, Ronald Acuna last year coming off of the ACL injury, he just didn't really look like himself. I don't think that knee was fully healthy. And now I think that you're starting to see a fully healthy Ronald Acuna. And that's going to be scary going forward. And I think that if the Braves aren't really going to be active in the free agency, but there is some glaring holes in the bullpen. The bullpen has been a little shaky at times. They're able to get the job done this past weekend against the Orioles. They did lose Kenley Jansen in the offseason, and but they're Raciel Iglesias. He started the season on the IL. They just got him back, so that's definitely going to be who's going to be the guy that's going to step in as well. You got guys like AJ Minter in the bullpen as well. You got Colin McHugh as well. And then you also got 40-year-old Jesse Chavez as well, rocking his design hats as well. So I think that the Braves, it's definitely it's got to be a different feel if you're an Atlanta Braves fan to be at 24-11 to get out of the gates hot, because usually this team, like I mentioned, at this time of the year, they're usually hovering around 500. So to be 13 games over 500. So we'll see if Hot Atlanta can keep it up all the way into October. So we're going to continue with the hot teams, and that is the Boston Red Sox. And this was a team that had some question marks going into the year, especially with Xander Bogaerts going to the Padres. They did add Justin Turner. They're, into the mix. They still have Rafael Devers. Devers is one of the young, good players. Everyone wants to talk about Juan Soto and all those guys, but I think that Rafael Devers gets lost in the mix. I think he's just really consistent. They got Alex Verdugo. They got all these young talent as well. I think that they're starting to piece it together. Their pitching is also, they dealt with some injuries in the past couple of years. They added some stars in the bullpen as well. The Red Sox coming into the series against the Phillies, they won 9 straight. They didn't end up winning the series against the Phillies. The Phillies won 1 out of the 3 games this past weekend. So the Red Sox currently sit at 21-15. They're still still in third place in the AL East, a loaded AL East. It's the Rays are just running away with the division right now. But you got to feel good if you're a Red Sox fan where you sit at 21-15. Your rival is right behind you. The Yankees are having a slow start to the year with injuries. But are the Red Sox, are you buying into them this early in the season, or do you see this team falling off in the standings in the AL East?
I just think the AL East is so good. And right now you're seeing the Rays get off to a huge start, but they've played some of the weaker series so far. They played the Athletics. I think they played the Royals. They played the Tigers. So I think their record will begin to level out. And then conversely, the Yankees, they should get better. And I think the Blue Jays and Orioles will continue their pace as well. So I kind of see that squeezing Boston out. I certainly don't think they're a cellar dweller. I think they could probably contend and maybe win the AL Central, but given their placement in the East, I see them dropping off. I do think 3 teams will make the playoffs from that division. So if they can kind of scrap with Baltimore and Toronto, who knows? They could be a sneaky wild card team, but I just don't like the placement that they're in the East.
Yeah, I just think that if you're going to compare this is like the SEC West of baseball. All these teams are just going to beat up on each other. I think that the 2 teams that are definitely going to make it, I think that the Rays are ultimately going to win the division. I know that I'd say the Blue Jays, but I don't think that anyone's going to slow down the Rays. They're just too hot off to start. Their offense is clicking. I just looked over Shane McClanahan and all those pitching staff. I should have just went with the Rays. Can't ever bet against the Rays. They're just very consistent, especially under their manager, Kevin Cash. They've really been consistent as well. So I agree with you. I think that the Red Sox are off to a surprising start, like the Pirates. The Cubs are also off to a surprising start as well. But I think that the Red Sox are going to play their way out of it. I'd love to see this Red Sox team, defeat all odds in this one. A lot of people didn't really see it in this team. I had them last place in this division. So if they were able to turn around, that would definitely be one of the stories as well. But we'll keep it in the AL East. Now we'll go to the cold teams, and that's the New York Yankees. I don't think that anyone had this team hovering around 500 right now. They're 18-17, but Aaron Judge has been on the IL We got a report today that he's going to be back on Tuesday, so that's definitely good news if you're a Yankees fan. What are the issues that you're seeing with the Yankees? Let's go ahead and couple the Mets as well. They're 17-18 as well. The season didn't even start. They already lost Edwin Diaz as well. I know we talked about that whenever it happened around the World Baseball Classic. Their offense has been really sluggish. The Rocky series they lost, their offense didn't really squeak out any run. And the series before that against the Braves, they had that game one in the doubleheader where they put up 6 runs. But after that, they went out and got Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, and everybody's thinking like, oh, this is going to fix the pitching problems. Well, it doesn't look like that because they're still letting up a ton of runs every game. So if you're picking between the two, who's going to figure out the fastest, the Mets or the Yankees?
I think the Yankees are going to figure out the fastest because they have the better overall team and they got some really talented young guys at the forefront. They just have had more of an injury bug with their pitching staff. I feel like I think they have the better bullpen as well. The Mets, I think that it's the same kind of stuff that got them last year. I mean, okay, yes, you sub Justin Verlander in for Jacob deGrom right now. It's hard to judge that move because Verlander hasn't made an impact on the Mets because of an injury. And Max Scherzer is almost 40 years old. So these guys are going to show a little bit of regression here and there. They're still going to be dominant starters, but every now and then they're going to get roughed up. And I just don't think the Mets made enough offensive additions to this lineup. I mean, look at the Braves lineup, look at the Mets lineup. It just pales in comparison. They're going to need to make some moves to add an extra power bat to this lineup. You got guys like Dan Vogelbach as your primary DH, and then Brett Beatty is kind of starting to show his promise as a young prospect, but still hasn't completely beat out like Eduardo Escobar. So Mark Kahana is starting in left field. So there's just not a huge, I don't know. They just don't have a lot of star power on this team, if that makes sense, beyond Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I think if they want to get back into contention, they have to be buyers. I mean, they got to get some more offense in this one, like you mentioned. There's just not enough firepower in this one. You got guys like Lindor, you got Marte in the middle order, you got Pete Alonso as well, you got Nimmo leading it off as well. So you got guys that can produce in that one, but you also have guys that just can't really do anything as well. But out of the two, if I would have had to really buy into it, had to be the Yankees as well. It's just like the pure talent. There's no way that this team is not going to make the playoffs with the talent that they have. I think that they have one of the best pitchers in the game, Garrett Cole. He's off to a phenomenal start. They got Nestor Cortez. That's their 1-2 punch. So they just got to, figure it out. They got to get through this injury bug as well. That's really what's hurting this ball club. But I think that if I had to pick between the two, it would definitely be the Yankees to figure it out. But I did not see both of the New York teams hover around 500, but we'll see what happens. But the last team that we're going to talk about that's off to a really rough start, and it's a worse start than the Yankees and the Mets, and that's the St. Louis Cardinals. 11-24. After Yachty era and after the Pujols era, it is just not a good sign for the Cardinals as they are dead last in the NL Central. The Pirates, the Cubs, the Brewers are all ahead of them. And who would have thought that the Pirates would be ahead of the Cardinals, and by a very wide margin? They have they're up 9 games in this one, and it's going to have to take, honestly, a miracle in this one. They're already 13 games back. I think that the Brewers are going to ultimately catch up and potentially pass the Pirates. That's probably going to be a 90-plus win team. So the Cardinals, I don't think, have enough offense to go far in this one. I think that the Cardinals' offense has been suspect. I mean, you got Nolan Arenado, I get that. You got Paul Goldschmidt. But outside of that, I mean, you got guys that are stepping up. Brendan Donovan has been good. He's had a good couple of good young years as well. You signed Wilson Contreras, but like you mentioned, he's not even the starting catcher anymore. So things are slowly going downhill. So it's looking like this Cardinals, this – I'm not really going to call it a dynasty, but this has really been one of the more consistent, teams in the MLB. And now all of a sudden they've fallen flat on their face. So this is definitely a surprising start.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought this looked like one of the more complete teams. I was a little suspicious of the starting pitching. I thought they might need one or two more guys in that regard, but uh, this should be one of the best lineups in baseball. You had Jordan Walker coming up. He's
Yep.
baseball's top prospect. He wasn't ready for the MLB. That's okay. Certainly don't let him develop in the environment that is in St. Louis right now, or else he might be a huge bust. So let him sort it out. But beyond that, I mean, there was a surplus of options in the outfield. You have a really interchangeable infield with Tommy Edman, Paul DeYoung, and Brendan Donovan. And then if Jordan Walker were to assert himself, he would probably be the starting third baseman of the future. I mean, I guess he'd have to play outfield because of Nolan Arenado, but
Yeah. Too crowded.
but that's a good problem to have, right? That your top third baseman prospect has to move positions because you have an all-star third baseman. So for this team to be offensively as bad as they are is inexcusable. So I don't know if that's a individual thing for each player, or if it's an approach thing for the team, but they got to get it figured out in a hurry. I mean, I think that the Pirates and the Reds and the Cubs will regress around them, but if I'm the Milwaukee Brewers, I'm going to just try to go all in and, just don't even let it get to the trade deadline and make some moves to just really put this division away.
Yeah, I mean, if they make some moves, I mean, they got the best starting rotation in the MLB. It's not even close. I mean, guy like Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff is your 1 and 2. It's not going to be, if you get to a postseason. I mean, like I mentioned, you get to the postseason, you got the best starting rotation, the 1-2. What's been the Brewers, kryptonite is the offense. Once it gets to the months of September and October, the offense fades. So I think adding a couple more bats they did in the offseason, like you mentioned, adding one of the Contreras brothers